Welcome back to my FanGameMaker tutorial series. So before we jump into events, I want to show you a couple more general things you can do with your rooms. So last time I showed you how to use the warp object, but now let's take a look at the room changer object instead. For example, with our second room, it's a bit longer, right? And the camera moves over if we enter the next room. But let's say you want the camera to follow the player. If we set it to the X, it's no longer gonna be locked to one room size, and instead it's gonna follow around the player object. So let's see how that looks like. And as you can see, the camera moves with the player and it stops whenever you reach the end of the next room. Also here at the end I placed, instead of object warp, I placed a object room changer, which again functions the same way. You just set the room to be the next room. You can even click, you can check autosave if you want the transition to the next room to be autosaved. Another quirky thing you can do with a room changer, so we can set this to go to the same room, but it's gonna be the type wraparound. I'm gonna place another room changer up here. It'll also go to the same room that we're already in, and the type will be wraparound. And now it does what you'd expect it to do. You wrap around the room, just like that. You could also do something silly like splitting these room changers in half if you want the screen wrap to work with an offset. But in that case, we have to actually set the offset ourselves. So this trigger or room changer right here is offset by 800 pixels to the right. So you can see it's one room size. So we set the X offset of 800 here, and we want it to work backwards, so minus 800 offset here. Let's see what that does. Let's see. And there we go. It works. And if you were to like try to jump back into it from below, it also works the other way around, as you can see. Next up, how do you make an animated object? For that, we can actually take a look at the killers and take a look at the cherry object here. If we edit the sprite, we can see it doesn't have one image index, it has two. If you click on show preview, you can see the animation here. You can even adjust the speed of the animation here, but what you adjust here is not going to be the image speed of the actual sprite. It's just for the preview. So let's say I want my tileset to be animated, right? Since my tileset is only a background, that's not going to work. So we could grab a tile and turn it into a sprite. Create new sprite, copy it in here, and now we can copy and paste this, and now we have two frames. Obviously they're one and the same, so now we can go ahead and try and animate this somehow. I'm gonna just make these little pillars here like move. It's already done, that's our next frame. Copy paste that and keep going. All right, so this is these are our animation frames, frame by frame. I moved these over by a pixel, then I made them move over a little faster to the right and back to the middle. So we have our sprite intro tile animated, and we turn it into an object. We give it this sprite, and we want it to be a block. Right now, it's not gonna act as a block. So just like we did for the player killers, this needs a parent. So we go to blocks and give it object block. And then we also need to make this little guy solid. Now we can place him in the room. Gonna stretch this one, have it a bit bigger, and there he goes. But oh no, the animation speed is way too fast. How do we change that? So I could once again go to the old editor and like right click, creation code, and set the image speed for each individual block. But if I had like a billion animated blocks, it would be way too much effort. So that brings us to the events. So if we open the object, every object can have events. The create event gets executed when the object gets created, and that is what we want. When the object gets created, we go to the control tab on the right here, and we drag in execute code. This will be where we can make it do what we want. In this case, slow down the image speed. So we type in image underscore speed. Right now, it's initially set to 1. That is the current speed. So if we want it to be slower, we could give it a decimal like 0.5. We could go 1 divided by 4, which would be 0.25. So it's really, you can set it to whatever you prefer. I think I prefer decimals So let's go for 0.25. And there you go. Every object of this that you place now will have this creation code. And as we can see, the animation is now slower. I never said it looks good, but it's animated. It does what we told it to do. So now if we go back to our cherry, this time in objects, not in sprites, if we open that and check the create event, you can see it also has an image speed, in this case 1 divided by 15. And it also has some variables that are set. For example, if this variable was set to true, the cherry would bounce if you had it move. And this one, very important, checks if the cherry is outside of the room, and if so, destroys it. But the word bounce doesn't automatically set an object, so it has the ability to bounce. Same for this one. These are just variables. These variables are set in the creation code, and then they're being used in other events. For example, the step event. The step event is executed every frame of the game. So it keeps running for every object. And here, for example, it checks if bounce. So this means if bounce equals true, in other words, and then it executes the bounce code. This is what actually makes the cherry bounce. And in end step, we have if this variable is set to true, it checks if the cherry is outside of the room boundaries. And if this check is correct, it left the room, then it executes instance_destroy, and that deletes the cherry. So whatever is set in the creation code is executed one time. So there's other useful variables you can set. For example, if you want the block to be a little more transparent, you can set the image alpha, which is usually at 1, to 0.5. Now it'll be a little see-through. You can set the image angle to, let's have it be rotated by 45 degrees to 45. You could also stretch the object horizontally by changing the image X scale to 2. Now it will be 2 times as wide. And if we wanted to be just big in general, we could also do the same for the Y scale, and now it'll be just 2 times the size. But remember how I already had like a block stretched here? Let's actually add another one that's stretched even more. Now it's even bigger. Well, this looks odd, doesn't it? But here we can see that the creation code that we set actually overrides me stretching it manually in the editor. So if I truly wanted this block to be as big as it is right now, I'd have to hop into the other room editor and then change the creation code. I'd set like image X scale and image Y scale in this object, and that would then overwrite the create event. Also, I'm gonna place tiles on 2 of these. Okay, now we can see the creation code that we set in the room actually worked, and this block is bigger than all the other ones that are set to image X scale equals 2 and Y scale equals 2. Okay, but this is odd. I placed this background tile directly onto the block, and you can see it rotated in a really weird way. We set the image angle to 45, so it rotated correctly, but why isn't it centered on the background tile that I set it to? And that is because of the origin of our sprite. Right now the origin is set to 0, 0, which is the top left corner of the block. So the image angle is gonna rotate around that origin. But we wanted to just rotate around the center. So we hit center, boom, and it already did the work for us. 32 divided by 2, crazy work. The result of me changing the origin is that every object that I placed was moved up and left by 16 pixels. So now I'd have to change my grid here and then carefully readjust all these blocks that I placed. And now they're properly centered again, at least these 2 that are supposed to be on the tiles. And let's see if that did the trick. All right, and as we can see, now the tile that I placed is exactly in the center of the block. Very good. Also, yeah, solids as slopes doesn't really work, so it's gonna have a weird collision like this. I'm gonna get rid of the image alpha, because that kind of looks weird. So since the blocks are tilted, I could reselect the parent. We can go to blocks, to slopes, and then set slope as the parent. And now these blocks actually behave like a slope would. Animated slope blocks. Perfect. Let's say I want the blocks to actually rotate, like every frame. Would I do this in the create event? We could set image angle plus equals 5. So now it would change the image angle by an additive of 5, but it would only do so once, since this is in the create event. So if you actually wanted to rotate by 5 every frame, we would have to set a step event. Again, drag in the execute code, and then we could go image angle plus equals 5, and now it'll execute this code every frame. And there they are. They're beautiful. Oh, this is... why does this work? What the fuck? What's... Dude, these slopes are insane. What do you mean this works? Oh god. Okay, you can get stuck in the blocks. But yeah, as you can see, you can make crazy shit with this alone. Me chilling on my slope block. Another important event, in my opinion, is the alarm. So the alarm, if you played daunting, you probably already know what this does and how this works. So we have different alarms here. You can have like an alarm 0, and let's say on alarm 0 we want the object to get destroyed. So let's do instance underscore destroy, open and close parentheses, and boom, it gets destroyed on alarm 0. But there's nothing that like makes alarm 0 happen. So we could set that in the create event. So we go alarm, and then it's important to select the like flat parentheses. God, I don't know what they're called. Equals to, and then when do we want this to happen? If we go 50 frames, it would happen after a second. So 200 frames would be 4 seconds. So let's try that. They're gonna get deleted after 4 seconds. Oh, they're gone. No, my friends. All right, so it works. Okay, let's get rid of all of these beauties, except for one. We'll keep one around. Okay, but let's say you don't want the object itself to get destroyed. Maybe you should do something else. Maybe you should kill the player once the alarm happens. So you're in luck, there's already a script in place for that. You just need to type in player underscore kill, open and close parentheses, and it'll execute the code. Yippee, yippee, yippee. Oh. I had too much fun. But yeah. So you could do stuff like this and set it to like a timer. I don't know why you would, but you can. Let's go over another important function. So let's say, okay, we don't want it to kill the player, but we want something to happen, like an object to spawn, right? Just something to spawn. That is instance create, underscore create, sorry. As you can see at the bottom here, this function wants a couple of values from us. It wants the X position, the Y position, and the object that it should spawn or create. So I could set it to 0, 0. This would make it spawn at the very top left corner of the room. If I wanted to be a little more to the right and down, I could do like 64 by 64. But let's say we want to spawn it on the player. So the way to achieve this is we type in the player object name, which is just player in this engine, .x, so I already set it to the player X position, and now player.y. Now, what do we want to spawn on the player? That's right, a cherry. So it's essentially the same, but we still kill the player, but in a different type of way, at least. Oh man. Yeah, there you go. You can spawn objects. Hell yeah. On a timer. But that's kind of lame, right? It's just spawning a cherry on you. That's kind of unfair. What if we made the block shoot the player with the cherry? So let's take a simple approach of just duplicating the cherry object. Cherry aimed. And it can have all these values, because these values is what makes it a cherry. So now we just want to adjust it so it directly aims at the player. So to do that, we type in direction equals point underscore direction. And once again, you can see this wants a lot of values from us. X1, Y1, X2, and Y2. So we don't need the first two values, so just X and Y. And then, again, for the second, we'll set it to player X and player Y. But it also needs a speed. Speed equals, and if we want to make it fastest, give it a speed of 8. And now once it spawns, it aims directly at the player, and it moves at a speed of 8. Now how to spawn it. We don't want to spawn it on the player, so not on player.x and player.y. Instead, we want to spawn it on the object itself. And that's simply x and y. Because the x and y values are the ones of the object that we're editing right now. So, and since the origin is in the middle of the block, it'll already spawn in the middle. We don't need to do... We can always adjust this value by x plus 16, y plus 16. That would be offset to the right and down by 16 pixels. But we don't want that since it already spawns perfectly in the middle. And we spawn our cherry aimed. And that's happening exactly once. If we want this alarm to repeat, let's see, it starts after 200 frames. Let's say it starts after 50 frames and it happens every 50 frame. Alarm and then the flat parentheses 0 to 50. So now the alarm code is in the alarm itself. So this makes it so this alarm repeats every 50 frames. Right here I could set like alarm 1 to 50. I could add alarm 1 and have something else happen in alarm 1. But for our goal, we want it to be alarm 0. And now we have an evil slope block that shoots cherries at us. Beautiful. Just like God intended. And we get an error, yes! Alright, this will happen numerous times throughout your game making journey. You get an error. So let's analyze this error. It says there's an error in action number 1 in a create event for object cherry aimed. Okay, so object cherry aimed is a problem. The create. So this line of code is a problem where we point it at the player. It's looking for a position, an X value of the player that doesn't exist anymore because the player is dead. So if we go into cherry aimed, and this is really important, if you have anything regarding like aimed at the player or like spawning at the player position, you need to check first if the player is alive. So we need to do an if statement. So this code only gets executed if the player is alive. So we do if instance underscore exists, parentheses and then player, and then the squiggly bracket. It does this code, and we go below and close the squiggly bracket. So everything that's in between these two beauties will only be executed if the player exists. So in a way, errors are nothing more than just like puzzle solving. It tells you exactly what went wrong, and there we go. The player is dead and now defaults to just shooting the cherries to the right. But I don't like how that looks. So instead of having it only choose the direction when the player is alive, which is cool and good, but we can make this prettier, is we move this code to the event that actually spawns the cherry, which is this one. This one spawns the cherry in the first place. So now if we do if instance exists player, here instead, now the cherry will only be spawned if the player is alive. So now it won't mindlessly shoot the cherry to the right anymore, since it's not even gonna spawn. So here we are, it's aiming at the player. Oh, it got me! It got me! And I'm dead, and its purpose is fulfilled. It killed me, so there's no point in it having to keep shooting at me. So yeah, it just stops. I think that's a cleaner solution to the problem. So the block is a menace, right? We need to get rid of it. We need an option to fight back. All right, so let's make it killable by shooting it. So this brings us to a collision event, and it's gonna be a collision with the player bullet. And if you want to be lazy about it, you can go to the main 1 tab, and you already have like some drag and like this is like instance create. This is destroy the instance. You have like a lot of like drag and drop options that you could use. So for example, if you just want to quickly destroy the instance, like the bullet hits the thing and then it destroys itself, then you can just place that. If I were to select other, it wouldn't destroy itself, but it would destroy whatever hits it, whatever it collides with. So this would make it so my bullet gets destroyed, which is not what we want. That's something reserved for bullet blockers. And object means that if my bullet hits this cube, this intro tile animated, we could have another object being deleted if you need that to happen. But for our case, it should just destroy itself. And to have it be done right, we'll just open this and call instance destroy, just like that. Your days of tyranny are over! Rotating slope block! Hiya! And it's gone. Just like that. 1 HP, doesn't even do anything fancy, it just deletes itself, because, you know, that's what we set it to. Okay, but I want my evil block to have HP. We could do that. So right here in the create event, we're gonna set HP to 5. And collision with bullet event, instead of instance destroy, we're gonna set HP minus equals 1. So every time a bullet hits this thing, it's gonna decrease the HP. And since we're shooting a block, right, the bullet already gets destroyed upon contact. But if you made like a custom object and it wasn't like set to object block, doesn't have a parent, the bullet would actually go through the object and collide with it on many frames. So the HP would just like drain like that. So just to visualize how we would normally do it, with, and then in parentheses, other. In this case, other is the object that collides with our object intro-tile animated, so the bullet, squiggly parentheses, and instance destroy. So this code, all it does is it makes sure the bullet gets deleted. And now we want to destroy the object when HP reaches 0. So we need to always check every single frame if the HP is 0 or not. So that goes into step, and we need another if statement. If HP double equals 0, instance destroy. And to have the hit be a bit more impactful, with collision with bullet, we can add a sound that plays every time that we hit the thing. So this would just be sound underscore play. And remember that the sounds are in this folder here. Let's see, it's just called boss underscore hit. In quotation marks, boss underscore hit. And close parentheses. So here we have our little guy. We hit it, it plays the sound. Doesn't die immediately. Bullet gets destroyed. And once the HP reaches 0, it dies. But I want iframes! Alright, set iframes to 0. We need to initialize this variable first. Everything that we use in our events, we can't just like conjure it out of nothing. It needs to be set in the create event, so the variable exists. So now we go back to collision with object bullet, and all of this code, we want this only to be executed when there's no iframes. So first of all, in the step event, we want to make sure that the iframes always go down. Iframes minus equals 1. So now they always count down, and if we hit the thing, it checks that the iframes are less than or equal to 0. Now we don't want to forget that we reset the iframes. So let's give it like 25. So when we initially hit the thing, it'll have iframes of a negative amount because it keeps counting down. It'll execute this code, all of this, and then it'll set the iframes to 25, so we can't immediately hit it again. We'll need for this 25 to go down. It'll go down every frame, once every frame, so we'll need to wait half a second to be able to hit it again. So now if I spam, I can no longer spam kill the boss. Perfect. But I kind of want to visualize when the enemy's in iframes. And that's simple to set up. So in the step event, we add another if statement. If iframes are bigger than 0, I'm going to set the image alpha to 0.5. And then else if iframes are smaller than or equal to 0, the image alpha will be set to 1 again. And now we have like a lot of code. So let's add some like code commentary. So just like that, with // you can add like comments to your code in case like you code something and you want to like look back at it later to see what it does. So here we have the rotates the object every frame, checks when to destroy the enemy if HP equals 0. Here we have the code that makes the iframes count down every frame, and this deals with the opacity of the enemy. It's reduce opacity if in iframes, and if iframes are not active, then the opacity or the image alpha is set back to 1. And I did the same to the collision with bullet code. So here we check if we can damage the enemy. If so, it reduces HP by 1, destroys player bullet, places sound, and it resets the iframes. So that was a lot of code, but let's see if it does anything. There he is. Boom. All right. So it turns a little bit more transparent as a little indicator that we can't harm it. It's in iframes. Now, if you want to make these iframes longer, you just edit this value here. You can add it to 50, and you'll have to wait a bit longer before being able to shoot the enemy again. If you want to increase the HP, you can do so in the grade event. You can set it to 10, whatever you prefer. Also, if you're ever in need of like custom sprites, or you don't want to like draw anything yourself, or even look for like animated objects, I'd recommend the Spriters resource. Just like dig around and see what you can find. Maybe you can find interesting textures for like tilesets for Fangames or like enemies. So right now I want to look for like an explosion effect. As we can see, we have a lot to choose from, but there's only one correct choice in the meta, and it's the realistic explosion. So I'm gonna save this image. And now what I usually do is I create a new sprite. I go to Edit Sprite, go to File, and then create from strip. And then after selecting the image that we just downloaded, we have this realistic explosion. That's a lot of frames. We need to cut these out. So at first it's asking us for the number of images. Let's count. So it's 17 images. Baboom. Images per row, 6. The last one missing, so that's fine. And now what is the image width? I mean, first of all, I don't want this like top bit to be in my sprite, so I need to set the vertical pixel offset to whatever that value is. Now we mess around with the image width and image height and try and get it right. And as you can see, all the boxes are now perfectly aligned with the sprite sheet, and we hit OK. And it might not be perfect. Like, as you can see, it's not perfect. I still have this like darker blue line here. But that's fine. Okay, so we go to images and then erase color, and you click on the blue. Okay, and that has been removed. And since we saw there's still this pesky little line here, we try to erase color, and oh, it already selected it for us. But yeah, if it doesn't do that, you can just try and click this line, and like that, everything is now transparent and the explosion effect is successfully imported. Let's call it SPR explosion. If we modify mask, we can see like the hitbox of the thing. And this shows you like the combined hitbox. If you separate collision marks, you can see for each individual image that this is how the hitbox now looks like. Now that's a useful feature, because like this image doesn't have like a lot of like see-through pixels, but let's imagine it had like a glow, right? It has a big fucking glow around this part of the sprite, just in theory, right? Now if we go to modify mask, you can see the hitbox is quite large. You probably wouldn't want the hitbox to be this large, so with alpha tolerance, we can reduce the size of that hitbox. I usually set it to like something like 150. For it to be like pretty lenient, because like we don't want the glow to kill. That's cringe. So that's what the alpha tolerance lets you adjust here. And we'll make that an object, obj explosion. So now that we know the hitbox is great, we can set it to player kill as a parent. And now once this guy dies, so on the destroy event, when it gets destroyed, execute a piece of code, and you can still spawn something on the object itself with the X and Y value, even though it's been destroyed. Explosion. The sound as well. Player_death. Now there should be one remaining issue with this. Two remaining issues. Once again, we want to center the origin of sprite explosion, and also the explosion was a little too fast. So let's add a create event, and let's do image speed equals maybe half the speed that it had. But you also notice that the animation kept repeating, it kept looping. We don't want that. So there's an event for that in other called animation end. If the animation ends, the object destroys itself. Bada bing, bada boom. That should be all done. I will defeat you, fiend! awesome. Absolute fucking cinema, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. I can fly, bitch. And the explosion kills, as you see. You can make the explosion bigger. You can adjust the image_x scale and image_y scale. Actually, let's do that right now. If you don't want to always have to set X scale and Y scale, there's usually a little trick I do where I just set image_x scale, for example, equals 2. And then I add end step, which is a little more precise. And I do image_y scale equals image_x scale. So now if I changed the X scale, the Y scale would just like be the same as the X scale. It's not super necessary, but it's one less value I have to think about. Perfect. Well, let's say you're not like the biggest fan of, you know, the hitbox. All of these stray pixels here, all of these stray pixels will kill you. So you can change this to manual, go for disk, and you can set the circle itself. So from the left, we could make it like 8 pixels. The width of the image is 72, so 72 minus 8, something like that. And then you can manually set the hitbox. Now it'll have this hitbox for every single animation sprite. It's obviously not perfect. At least with this, you'll have a consistent shape that'll be the hitbox. So this is an adjustment you can do. Another solution would be to manually maybe delete the stray pixels from the image, and then you can keep it precise, just in case you don't want those stray pixels to kill you. Then there's one more little event I want to go over real quick. The draw event. So in this event, you can like draw text. So for example, you could have it draw the text enemy, have it like spawn a little above the enemy itself. So that's why Y is -64. But if you leave it like this, then the block is gone. So a line you do need at the start is draw self. This makes sure that the sprite itself gets drawn, and then everything that follows. Beautiful. The enemy. And let's draw the HP of the thing. Everything you put in quotation marks is gonna just appear as normal text. But if we have draw text, and let's go with a plus value, so it's gonna be under the enemy, and it's gonna just be HP, this is set in create. I'll set this one to 80. Wow! And it updates as well. Gone! Also, if you want the text to not be black, in front of the text that you set, you can do draw_set_color. And then if you want it to be white, you do C_white. There's other colors to choose from, but we'll just go white for this example. And it does the trick. And then one last quick little thing to spice up the background. Okay, so I made this very simple background with a resolution of 16 by 16. It's not that big. If you go to the background segment, you can actually set up to like 8 backgrounds in a room. You can have them be like invisible, you can have them be as a foreground. So right now we have the color set as a background, and that is independent of the background that we have chosen. Right now there's no background selected for this room, it's just a flat color. So let's go for B grid. And oh my god. That's a lot. But yeah, it already tiles horizontally and vertically. If these were not selected, you would just have the background there. But obviously, if it's just a short little pattern you wanted to tile, if it was in the foreground, it would be very hideous. And then you could have this part, and then you can add like another background here. Maybe like you drew some like foliage, maybe to go in the foreground. So you could have like a couple of bushes that you draw as a background, you have it be in front of the tiles. You could go crazy with this. And as you can see, there's room for a lot of different backgrounds you can use. So let's see how hideous it looks. I mean, yeah. It's definitely not as empty anymore. It gives the background like a texture. You could go for like diagonal lines or something. Yeah, it's just an idea of a repeating pattern you can have for the background. Alright, and that's gonna be it for this video. Events are awesome. they can do a lot. They can spawn objects, they can change an object's behavior, you can have something happen after a set amount of time. It can spawn something when an object gets deleted. You hit an object and it has an interaction. You can go fucking wild with the amount of like combinations you can set in a singular object. And just make sure to like keep track of like the code you write. Maybe do like the / and then like comment on like what this block of code wants to achieve. So if you look back on this object like a few weeks down the line, a few months down the line, you're not looking at a block of code and being like, what the fuck did I do here? But instead you're gonna, you know, just like you want to keep your folders organized, it's also a good idea to try to keep your blocks of code organized in the same way. I hope this video won't end up being longer than the previous one. Jesus fucking Christ, I've been recording for 2 hours. Alright, until next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Just kidding, I forgot something important. Okay, so if you're gonna have bigger rooms, like let's say this is like 8 rooms big or whatever, each object that you place in the room matters for performance, right? So I always do this. I place the blocks like this. Normally you would want to have like one stretched block for this whole segment, but it doesn't matter. You can do it like this, and then check this out. There's a tool, and it's called glue adjacent instances. Just make sure it tells you here that the fields are going to get destroyed. So if you have like any fields, any settings in these blocks, they're going to get destroyed. So watch out. But normally they're just solid blocks. So yes, and it does it for you. It does it for you. Performance. Yes. I forgot something. Part 2. Okay, so in your cherry aimed object, right? I didn't do this because this object already checks for like whether it's outside the room or not. But if you make an object like a bullet and it gets, you know, flung around, it goes off screen, it doesn't get deleted. No, we can't have that. Anytime you have anything that flies in any direction and leaves the room, make sure it gets destroyed. Otherwise, those objects will float into the void and it'll add up over time and fucking lag your game. So add event, there's an event for that. Other outside room, there you go. And you add the piece of code and you do instance destroy and you're good to go. Outside room, instance destroy. Always keep that in mind. Don't lag your game. Performance matters. All right, I'm out.